You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. This week, my guest is John Pierce, who's going to talk about the restoration of gun rights, about false imprisonment, about Lautenberg amendments, about domestic violence, about a whole bunch of legal stuff that can keep your back hole out of jail. The onion of gun laws. This episode might touch on an hour, and I tried a new format, so let me know how it sounds to you. Trying to tweak and improve and move and slice and dice and do all those things to make this thing so nice. Michael J. Woodland of M-W Tactical is with me, and he's talking about the JM4 tactical holster. He's doing a review of the Relic, and that's way at the end. I'm your fun-loving host, the usually smiling Reverend Ken Blanchard, also known as the Black Man with a Gun. Thank you so much for being a part of my life, a part of my family. At the time of this airing, this is episode number 581, the first week of September. It's when Patreon sends me the support that you guys hook me up with every month. So thank you so much. Patreon.com/Black Man with a Gun. Speaking of supporters, we have a new company that's working with us. Ammo.com. You'll hear about them again later. But you can save $20 off of your $200 order using the link that they gave me at ammo.com/Black Man with a Gun. This episode has some serious knowledge in it, so make sure you tell Aunt Sadie, Cousin June, Tommy, Bobby, and everybody. We're going to share this thing, all right? Trying to keep your butt out of jail. This is the Black Man with a Gun Show, the Responsible Gun Owners Podcast. This week on the Black Man with a Gun Show, we got the restoration of gun rights with a good friend of mine, John Pierce, Esquire. We're talking about the Lautenberg Amendment and domestic violence and false accusations. And I got my main man, Michael J. Woodland, here, and he's going to do a review of the JM4 tactical holster and more.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michael, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you for the invitation. It's greatly appreciated.
Shoot, this is like Mikasa Sukasa now. I mean, it done switched.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know how I go. I just try to make it sound a little bit more professional. Like, yeah, I just stepped off a tour or something. Give it some type of flair.
And we're approaching the change. I'm about to put Black Men with a Gun in a minute, the way it's rolling. It's all good, man. How you been?
Yeah, I've been okay. No complaints. Busy week for me, doing some product reviews, testing out a holster that one of my buddies from the Army has sent me that he's putting together. So I'm trying to give him some suggestions to make that holster a little bit better for possible selling that he wants to do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Man, we're coming up on September already. Labor Day is coming up really fast. And back to school. Little Anna gone to school already?
Yeah, she started school the first week of August. It was like the 8th, 7th or 8th, whatever it is in Georgia. So,
okay.
She's up in pre-K right now. And it kind of threw me for a loop because when it happened, it came so fast. I didn't even realize, okay, we're back in school.
Summer is over. Poof.
Yeah. And I was going to the post office one morning, drove down the street. And when I went to turn, kids are standing on the corner. And I was like, what is that mob doing right there? And then I see the school bus pull up and I was like, oh man, I forget. School started all over again.
For y'all who don't know it, Michael has the prettiest little girl. She's like made for television or something.
Yeah, the little assistant. She's a ton of fun to be around.
I know that's right.
Yeah, man.
This week's show is not the sunniest. It's kind of trying to keep it real. There's some stuff going on in our world. If you're a gun person, that you can land in jail really, really easy, or there's just some stuff that's kind of not too cool. And we're going to talk about that this week a little bit. One of the things, it's Suicide Awareness Week coming up here in September, and suicide has touched a lot of people. not just the military, but just people. A lot of folks are walking around without any hope whatsoever. And do you know anybody, man, that has gone through some hard times?
I'm not certain if you remember back in the 90s. No, it was the 2000s. I'm sorry. About mid 2000s, late 2000s, before we hit 2010, there was a lot of reports about people in the military killing themselves. And a lot of it at that time frame was recruiters. And they was working some crazy hours, and people didn't want to let other people down and didn't want to look like a failure, so a lot of them was taking their lives. And it even impacted our unit, whereas at this time frame I was in 27 infantry out of Fort Stewart, and this one morning we just got finished doing PT. And you know how it is. Sometimes you get finished doing PT. Some people are dragging from partying all night. Other people are like coming over a sickness. And other people are like just happy to be there to live life. And I wasn't in the parking lot when it took place, but when I got back to the company, they had stated that this sergeant, E5, had killed himself in the parking lot, and like, it's just certain people you would think, okay, this guy has a perfect life. He doesn't have no issues, no problems. He's happy-go-lucky. And then all of a sudden, that's the story you hear. So it was pretty touching. But once again, you never really know what nobody's going through. And majority of the people that I know in the military who took their life, it was always based around their relationship.
Yeah, totally. We lost a really cool guy that was head of bearingarms.com not too long ago, Bob. It messed me up for a minute. Bob Owens. And like you said, you never know what starts it or what they're going through. But according to Suicide Prevention Lifeline, there's some warning signs. If you hear somebody talking about wanting to die or to kill themselves, that's a clue. If they're looking for a way to kill themselves, like searching online for a way. If they're talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others is another key here. Also, if they're increasing the use of alcohol or drugs, if they're acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly, if they're sleeping too much or too little, if they've started to withdraw and starting to feel isolated, if they're starting to get pissed off and rage, talking about seeking revenge, or they just have some crazy mood swings to the extremes. These are some signs. None of them one by one is it. But the truth is, suicide is preventable. All of us know somebody who's going through a tough time. Do yourself a favor. You'll be happy about it tomorrow if you just checked on your friend, your brother, your sister, a call, let them vent, let somebody know that you care. And if you can't handle it, which none of us can sometimes, just it can catch you you just come home from a party, you're having the best time of your life, and that's when you get the call that somebody else is not doing so hot. Give them a number. This number is 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. And that's 800-273-8255.
Can I go ahead and add something to your list?
Absolutely do.
One thing I did discover, when you come across people who starts randomly just dispersing their personal items for no reason, that's another indicator that you can look out for as well.
Yeah.
And of course, if their actions are becoming more reckless than they normally are, that's another indicator you can look out for.
Yeah, make sure you just take inventory of your people. One of the things I like about this podcast, and I've been doing it for a minute, is it allows me to reach and talk to people where they are. It's on-demand radio. So when you feel like listening to Ken and now Michael, you can plug us in. But I want to make sure that you guys know that I care about you. And that's why I do this stuff. It's more than money. It's more than you just hear my voice. It's because we are on the same team. We're some misfits. We're like ragamuffins that make us Americans. We're all over the place, but we got that one thing in common. And sometimes you need to know that there's somebody else on the other end, and we're here. So put on my clerical collar for a minute. If you need me, I'm here.
This portion of the show is sponsored by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Crossbreed Holsters has gained national recognition as a maker of the best and most functional concealment holsters available on the market today. Each holster is handcrafted to ensure your firearm is safe and secure while carrying, combined with the best customer service in the industry. Visit CrossbreedHolsters.com.
All right, next up, after these commercial breaks, we're going to talk about the John Pierce, and then we're going to come back with Michael and me. Need some ammo? Check out ammo.com. It's your best source for ammunition online. The shipping is fast, the customer service is good, and they sell name brands you can trust. Ammo.com. And if you like saving money as much as I do, use the link ammo.com/Black Man with a Gun. That was a documentary, actually, Michael and me.
Really?
Larry Elder did it back in the 90s, and it was a movie, a documentary. He was trying to go against what was the name of that crazy guy that was the crazy director? Forgot his name now, but he made this video, he made this documentary, and he came all the way to DC to have me in it, and I forgot. So I'm at home chilling, and he calls me and says, "Hey man, where you at?" And I'm like, "Who is this?" He said, "Larry." Like, "Oh, Larry Elder. Oh my God." He says, I said, "Where you at?" He goes, "I'm at the range, man, waiting for you." So I jumped in my car and I ride like balls to the wall, trying to get there as fast as possible. It's like an hour away. And I get there and he has a whole film crew at the range. And he goes, "I only hawked my whole family, my house, to pay for this movie dream that I got to beat this thing. And then you haven't colored people's time getting here." I was like, man, I feel so bad. I feel so bad, man. So we filmed it, and that's all right. For that, I'm going to give it all I got. So I went like hype mode in that thing. You'd have thought I was Flavor Flav on that thing. I mean, I was going crazy, and they were loving it. So I don't think they edited out any of my stuff because I was unlike my normal calm, unless they're shooting at me, I ain't going to get excited mode. This time I was just hyped up, and the film is still out there, Michael and me, but it didn't win the awards that he wanted. Little trivia.
I have to go look that up and go take a peek at
Yeah.
it.
That's some crazy stuff. Yeah, man, I've been here a minute. Been here a minute. All right, we'll be right back. John Pierce, Esquire. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really honored to be on.
Man, it's been a while since I've seen you, but you've been doing some stuff for the last couple of years.
Yes, I have. I've had the opportunity over the last several years as the number of clients that I've been serving continues to increase, working with residents and non-residents here in Virginia to get their gun rights restored. I've done some self-defense cases, some criminal defense involving various aspects of firearms law, and it's been a great adventure, and I look forward to many more years doing the same.
And it's cool because at first you were just a gun rights advocate, but then you went hardcore and became an attorney for our side, which is really, really cool.
You know, it's interesting. When I first decided midlife to add a law degree, I didn't think that there would be sufficient work in this area to justify full-time law practice. And I thought that the law degree would add both understanding and, in my eyes, of some of the nuances of the issues that we all advocate for. But as it turns out, if one is willing to travel and help out people across the Commonwealth, that there is more than enough work in the area of firearms to keep a number of us busy. There are, I would say, probably no more than a half dozen attorneys statewide who who really are keyed into the specific issues involved in specific firearms issues. I think that we're all kept fairly busy.
I know that's right. As soon as you wake up in the morning, there's somebody trying to take the rights away from an American citizen.
No question about it. A lot of people thought when we had a change in the presidency between Democrat and Republican that there would be some kind of magic wand that would cause gun rights to no longer be under attack. And that's certainly not the case. Gun rights advocates and those who are fighting for our rights, such as yourself, all we have is changes in scenery, but the battle continues.
For real. Well, I got a hypothetical question for you that I hope you can answer.
Sure.
What we got is, quite often, I'm the guy that folks call on a Saturday afternoon or when they're just thinking about it, and they say, hey, man, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm a member of my community. I'm a father and a grandfather, and folks love me at the community center, the PTA, and I vote, and I got Old Glory flying outside. But back in the day when I was a little kid, I was a little bit rebellious, and I got into some stuff. And I just recently found out that I'm a felon. How can I get my gun rights back? How can I fight this thing which has been over 30 years on a book somewhere? Is it possible, asking you, that they can get their rights restored after something like that?
Well, let me start off with the disclaimer that as an attorney, I give quite a few times, and that is I'm licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the advice that I'm giving here is specific to the Commonwealth of Virginia. If for those of your listeners that are in Maryland and D.C., the answers are very different, and I'm not licensed to give those answers. But let's assume that the person who calls you is a Virginia resident that has a felony. Let me walk you through the questions that I would ask them if they called me on that same issue. The first question I'm going to ask them is, are any of your felonies federal felonies? And if the answer to that is yes, then in the flow chart, we're at a dead end that says presidential pardon or as applied challenge in the federal courts are the only solutions. And the reason for that is there has been a board that was statutorily created in the ATF to review restoration petitions for those convicted of federal crimes. But that has been every year in the appropriations bill, the Democrats defund that and deny appropriations for that particular department. At one time, actually, G. Gordon Liddy had offered to pay for his own, out of his own pocket, to pay someone to process it, and was denied in that request. So it's been literally decades that program has been in existence, but has not been funded. But that's neither here nor there. Unless and until it is funded, the people that have federal felonies are going to be stuck with the two options of presidential pardon or an as-applied challenge in the federal courts, which can be a very expensive endeavor, and you need someone particularly adept in doing that. If the answer to that question is no, the next question I have to ask them is, are all your felonies in Virginia, or do you have any felonies outside Virginia? And that's a very important question, because under federal law, you have to get your gun rights back from the state that took them away. So if you have a felony in West Virginia and a felony in Virginia, then I have to get Virginia to give you back your gun rights in Virginia, but that will not remove your federal prohibition because you've still got a bar over in another state. So then you have to get an attorney in West Virginia to get your gun rights restored in West Virginia. And once both of those have restored you, then your federal prohibition will go away. So the next thing I need to know to advise people is whether or not we're talking just Virginia. Now, getting to the easiest of the cases, let's say that the person only has one or more felonies, all of which were Virginia state felonies. At that point, then I ask them what the felonies were, how long it's been, and what their record has been since then. And based on that, I can give them a relatively good idea of what their chances are of successfully getting your gun rights back. And one of the prerequisites that you have to have before you can even petition is you have to have your voting rights restored. The last two governors we've had here in Virginia, both of whom have been Democrats, have actually been very helpful in that regard. They haven't intended to. They're not friends of gun owners, but they have restored voting rights for felons almost automatically. And I say almost because there was a whole case here in Virginia requiring them to do at least some review of each case. And how much review they're actually doing is still very much a controversial question. But as long as my clients have their voting rights restored, it allows them to then move on and petition for gun rights restoration. And so the answer is yes, with conditions. And again, there's too many variables for me to go into and tie up your podcast here as to how I figure out what the percentage chances are. But I will say this, if someone were to call me today and say, hey, 15 years ago, I was convicted of possession with intent to distribute because I had X amount of marijuana with me and it was more than just simple possession. And since then, I've had no run-ins with the law. I have a job, a mortgage, 2 kids, and I've had pretty much a squeaky clean life since then, except for a couple of speeding tickets. In almost every jurisdiction in the Commonwealth, their chances of getting their gun rights back I'm going to estimate them at over 90%, unless there's some other factor. So there is a real chance for people, depending on what's happened since the original conviction. And I'll stop rambling on now.
All right. One of the things that you brought up that I didn't pay attention to right away was there are 2 different types of felonies, state and federal. You're pretty used to that, but I was thinking a felony and a felony. And felonies are usually crimes against other people or their property, punishable for more than a year in prison, which isn't a lot. And if you say a misdemeanor can be 364 days, which is still a lot. Felonies usually relate to the serious threat to a person or property, like assault, murder, DWI, domestic violence, drug crimes, kidnapping. And they really, really vary by state as to who considers what serious and all that good stuff, which is like a whole class on law, I guess, by itself.
Well, it really is. And further complicating the issue is, as far as gun rights are concerned, they don't necessarily adhere to a state's definition of what is a misdemeanor and a felony. And in this area, the most common example of that is, well, let me finish what I started to say, and then I'll give the example. The federal definition of a felony is a crime punishable by incarceration of more than 2 years. And even if the person was not sentenced anywhere near that. And the reason that throws a wrench into a number of state level convictions is Maryland's a great example. They have any number of common law misdemeanors that people have been convicted of down through the years that do not have a maximum penalty to them. So you might have been convicted of the misdemeanor of spitting on the sidewalk in Maryland, and this is merely an example and not necessarily a real one. And if they're charged under the common law version of that, which has no maximum sentence, then they theoretically could have been sentenced to more than 2 years, and they were swept up in the prohibition. And Maryland, as I understand it, and again, remember, I'm not licensed to practice there, but as I understand it, they have tried to encode statutory versions of all of these and charge under those going forward. But a lot of people, including members of Maryland law enforcement, were swept up in that at one time, and it became quite an issue. And they're not the only state that has that.
Yeah, anything that Maryland can do to prohibit you from having a gun, they will.
Absolutely.
All right, so it's not a cut and dry thing, and it's going to take some work. So anybody who's interested in that, what is your recommendation for them to do if they're trying to restore the rights depending upon where they live?
Well, if they live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, or they live elsewhere, but their original conviction was in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in either case, I'd encourage them to give me a call. Consultation is free, so there's no charge for me to help you untangle the issue and figure out where you are and what your chances are and what that might do for you going forward. My telephone number is 276-206-9615. And my website is John, John, Pierce, Pierce, and then ESQ.com. And they can reach out to me via email, via phone call, and I'll help them figure out what their chances are and whether it will help them. And I want to add right here, the reason I say whether it will help them, because there are states that do not honor other states' restorations. That is very common. And people get confused about that. Let's say that they only had one felony in Virginia. They come back, we get their rights restored in Virginia. The federal government recognizes that restoration, removes the federal prohibition, and then they get a Virginia concealed carry permit. And Tennessee and North Carolina recognize the Virginia concealed carry permit. But if you cross the line into Tennessee or North Carolina, and again, I'm not licensed to practice law there, but it is my understanding as a layman and as a firearms instructor, they do not recognize restorations from other states. And therefore, when you cross that line, instead of being a fully restored citizen with a concealed carry permit, you are a felon again with an illegal firearm.
Oh, man.
So gun rights restoration is a state-by-state process. And that's one of the reasons why people who are seeking gun rights restoration, they don't have to come to me. I'm not the only person in town who understands the nuances of firearms law, but they do need to go to someone who does understand those nuances, because I've had a number of clients, or rather, they weren't my clients, a number of people who have contacted me down through the years who had their rights restored using the services of a general practitioner who didn't notify them of that. Some of them have gotten in trouble for it, and others had stumbled upon one of my articles about it and had said, wow, I've traveled here, there, and everywhere, and it's amazing I didn't get in trouble. And so those are the kind of things that you want to have your attorney advise. Those kind of nuances are what you need to have your attorney advise you of when you're working your way through this kind of restoration. I heard someone say one time, and it's not my saying, but I thought it was great. When you're talking about gun laws, you're dealing with an onion, and there is no heart to the onion. There's just an awful lot of layers. And if you don't know what all those layers are, you're not going to be able to adequately advise your clients.
Nice. I like that. All right. We're going to change the gears for a minute, and we'll talk about something called the Lautenberg Amendment. There was a guy, a senator from New Jersey, who created this thing, a part of the Gun Control Act of 1968, and it still is in effect to some part, and it deals mostly, I believe, with domestic violence prevention, supposedly. And can you elaborate a little bit for me on that one?
Yeah, this is When I was talking earlier about the questions that I normally ask clients who call me up about restoration, I mentioned that, the first question I ask is about felonies that are federal. In reality, that's not the very first question I ask. The very first question I ask is, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence? And then I go on to explain to them what is meant by a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, because you would be amazed at the number of people who have in fact been convicted of a crime that fits the federal definition and aren't aware of it. And I help people all the time. I have probably half a dozen clients right now awaiting trial because they said no on the federal form when in fact the answer was yes, and they're being prosecuted for felony falsification of a form.
Ouch.
And so exactly. So here's the definition of that crime is any assault or battery conviction or any conviction that involves any degree of physical force against someone that meets a relationship definition. And that relationship definition is, spouse, child, and it goes on into a number of other relationships. I'd have to read the exact statute to you to get the nuance of it. But basically, if there was an element of physical force of any kind or assault or battery in the elements of the crime they were charged with, and the victim was noted on the record as being someone that met one of those relationships, it's considered a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. So, for example, in Virginia, you can either be charged with assault and battery family member, which seems like the clear analog to domestic violence, and you can be convicted of just assault and battery. However, it is possible to be convicted of assault and battery and have it meet the federal definition, and it's possible to be convicted of assault and battery family member and have it not meet the federal definition. And so this is a real tricky area of law. What happened is in Virginia, there used to be a case that was controlling precedent. It was called United States v. White, and it was decided by the Fourth Circuit in 2010. And that case basically said that the federal misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, the Lautenberg Amendment, did not apply to a Virginia case unless the trial record clearly showed that force greater than a mere offensive touching was used during the commission of the crime. Well, on March 26, 2014, the Supreme Court decided a case called United States versus Castleman. And in the Castleman case, they said that any level of force sufficient to sustain a conviction for assault or battery would cause a particular crime to meet the federal definition. And that is very different than the standard under White. And the reason for that is one of those things that you learn in law school and you realize that you've used that word incorrectly your whole life. We always talk about assault and battery, and you always think about two guys getting in a fight and punching each other. They're assaulting each other. They're battering each other. Well, those two words mean very different things. Battery means exactly what we think of, which is actual physical violence against one another. However, assault can be mere offensive touching or actions that give rise to a reasonable apprehension of mere offensive touching. So you could literally touch someone on the shoulder that did not want you to and theoretically have committed assault against that person. And that changes the scope of this Lautenberg Amendment drastically. And ever since the Castleman decision came down, people who had for years under the white standard, and again, that the white decision was handed down in 2010. So you've got a 4-year period there where people had gotten used to the idea that, okay, my trial record didn't show physical force beyond mere offensive touching, so I can buy. And then all of a sudden, after March of 2014, the rules changed, and a lot of people were filling out the forms incorrectly. And the Commonwealth has went after those people. They've decided that enough time has passed since 2014 for people to be educated. And since about 2016, they've aggressively prosecuted those who answer that question incorrectly.
Wow. All right. How about somebody who has a false domestic violence accusation against them? How do you undo that one?
Well, when you said accusation, do you mean conviction?
No, accusation. I mean, they're probably there's been allegations that they've been in domestic violence. There's bad divorce, breakup, and the spouse knows that the other one has a whole bunch of firearms, so they go on a rant to get them to take their firearms away. Has that ever come up with you?
Well, it comes up a great deal among people going through divorce proceedings. And if you have a spouse who is educated enough to know what the possible implications of such an allegation are, then it is a crowbar that people use against one another. And it's a very terrible thing. Of course, a number of quote unquote terrible things that people do to each other during a divorce have been around for a long time. But this particular one can have lasting consequences for people's jobs, for their ability to own firearms, etc. And the real problem is not that you can have a false accusation made against you, although that's not a good thing. The real bad thing is, prior to the Castleman decision, you would have attorneys who are defending people, and they get hit with one of these accusations along with a number of other things as part of a nasty divorce. And they would say, hey, look, if we have to plead out to this one, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to cost you anything. Well, after the Castleman decision, all those people are suddenly deprived of their Second Amendment rights. So going forward, my advice to anyone who finds themselves subject to such an accusation is, this is one you cannot afford to lose. This is one that you cannot plea bargain away unless the plea bargain allows you to plead to an entirely different offense that doesn't meet the definition. You need to make sure that your attorney who is defending you is aware of just how serious these allegations are and what a conviction under this particular statute could cause. And because of that, Virginia, among other states, offers a number of options, such as a deferred adjudication, etc., that will allow a first-time offender or someone who is accused for the first time to be able to have some options that don't actually result in a conviction. So just make sure that if you're accused of that, you understand how serious that accusation is, and your attorney understands that you cannot take a conviction that meets that. You would literally be better off taking a felony conviction of some kind than you would be, or at least for gun rights, not necessarily for employment, but for gun rights, you'd be better off taking a felony conviction for something else rather than a misdemeanor conviction. Because if you get that misdemeanor conviction, the only option that will restore your gun rights is a pardon from the governor of the state where your conviction occurred. And because Virginia has our strange 3-part pardon system, there's still a question as to whether or not some of those pardons will do that. So this is a critical charge if you're a gun owner, and make sure your attorney understands that.
Would this be like a special kind of attorney that you'd get? Like, what are you looking for when you're shopping?
Well, not necessarily a special kind of attorney. You just would want one, number one, who is a very good criminal defense attorney, because that's what you're looking for in that case. That person doesn't need to be a firearms attorney, but they do need to understand what the firearm implications are, or be willing to reach out for a consult with someone who does firearms law so they understand what options they have as far as different charges that they might be able to negotiate a plea agreement for, the deferred options that are available, etc. But like with any other criminal charge, what you need an experienced criminal defense attorney who knows how to represent you positively in the system. And the other thing I'll say, and I want to be very careful how I say this, because I do not in any way, shape, or form want to disparage all the many talented men and women out there who work as public defenders. But I always tell people, public defenders care greatly for their clients, and they work as hard for them as they possibly can, but their caseload is exponentially greater than that of a private attorney. And so the amount of time that they can spend preparing and researching on a given case is much more limited than if you hire a private attorney. And so I would say to anyone who is facing a criminal charge, especially one that has the potential to cost them their gun rights for the rest of their life, whatever they need to do to be able to afford a competent private attorney, I can't stress that enough. They really need to try and do that.
Man, that was some good stuff there. All right, man, I'm going to take your contact information and I'm going to make sure that's on the show notes. And this was the one and only John Pierce, my friend and brother from another mother. And man, it's been really good, man, to get this information. And
hey, take care, Ken. Thank you.
A few years ago, a friend of mine started this thing called the United States Concealed Carry Association. It's an education, training, and self-defense insurance company now. It's for responsible gun owners. You can get complete peace of mind when you join USCCA today. If you carry a gun for self-defense, you need this. It's a whole package: education, training, and self-defense insurance. Call my friend. The number is 1-877-488-8353. And if you missed that, go to the link at blackmanwithagun.com for USCCA.
I had a conversation the other day about colored people, Tom.
Yeah, man.
One of my buddies, he is a white guy, and we was sitting there, we was at the range, and one of my other friends made a comment about colored people, Tom. So of course, when everybody walked away, he looks at me and was like, "Hey man, what does CP Tom mean?"
Yeah.
So I gave him the story, what it means, which is colored people time, and how black folks are never on time. And then he just kind of looked at me and was like, "I don't think that's right, man. I don't think that's right." All right. So I was like, all right, man. So let me give you the real history about what took place with colored people's time. So right now, when you sit there and you look at it, in today's age, we make a joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's talk about what took place back in the 1920s and 30s when, like black folks started getting like jobs, real jobs that competed with their counterparts.
Right.
But even though you had a job, you necessarily couldn't afford a vehicle, right? So public transportation, or depending on other people, like if somebody was like the milk truck driver and their route went part of the way you had to walk to go to work, or, however you want to look at it, they would help each other out. Well, colored people time originally came from, if somebody was stressed out, and if I'm walking down the street and I saw it, I would take the time out of my schedule, not being concerned about being late, to help out somebody who is in a crisis that I'm aware that I can fix, because the struggle was real back then, So of course, when you sit there and you look at it in today's time more as I'm driving down the road and I see 4 women in a car and they got a flat tire. Okay. But I know I got to be at work at 9:00, but I can see it's about to downpour rain and nobody is stopping to help this car full of women. So I pull over, help them change the tire right quick, jump back in the car and try to make it to work on time. But now when I show up, I'm probably 5 or 10 minutes late.
Okay.
And then he was like, "Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. So why is people making jokes about it?" Because the cliche now is it's more professional to show up on time. You know what I'm saying? So it was like we had a whole revolving conversation about that. And it was like, man, where you been at this whole time?
Oh shoot, man. I've heard 2 different, that's a different one. I've also heard that because of the countries and the places in the world where the temperature is the same, where it's always hot, there's no rush to change or to work as hard or as fast in the heat. So you learn how to like go really slow, and you take there's no hurry versus the folks who had to plant by a certain time of the year, and then there was like the frost or the snows came, so you were always worked on seasons. But if you worked in a country like Africa or Latin America where it was always warm, then there was no hurry because the seasons weren't going to change. That was like one theory. And then the other one goes back to slavery, where if you were working as a slave and you worked better than anybody else in your group, you could cause somebody to get killed. So everybody would slow down so that everybody was equal, so that nobody would get singled out. So that's also a part of the culture. And I am going to leave this in here. We're going to add a little bit to this as it go.
Yeah. So like I said, I can't remember who told me that. Was it my grandmother or my grandfather? How they broke it down to me. But I used to run to my grandparents for everything. So like, back in the day, everybody else used to go to an encyclopedia. I'll just wait till I got home and ask my grandmother and grandfather. They lived through half the stuff we was writing about in school anyway. So
true that.
That's a direct source right there.
True that.
You hear it from the horse's mouth.
And that was Michael Moore that I was talking about. That was 2004. You'll find out. I think it's still on Amazon. It's Michael and Me, the video, 2004.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up. So what else has been new? What else has been going on with you?
I'm actually working on tightening up my website. I found out some new things that you can do to make your search engine work better, so that Google can find your articles, and trying to make that a better site, trying to improve Black Man with a Gun podcast, being at all these conferences and talking to all these guys and ladies that are doing great stuff with their internet properties. I've learned a few things, so now I'm just trying to tighten that up a little bit. And the writing bug has hit me, so I'm writing this fiction, which has nothing to do with firearms. We're talking as we get to the October mode of Halloween and monsters and stuff. I got a whole series about a werewolf that used to be a slave, and I'm having a ball with this thing, and I'm pushing the crap out of it only because it's like a diversion. It's just not connected to anything else that I've been doing. And I got 2 books already out in Amazon, and working on the 3rd. Is getting edited right now, and then putting all that out on kenblanchard.com.
I can honestly tell you, I tried to do the whole book writing thing because everybody's always told me I've lived a pretty interesting life. So I was trying to write a series of books about my life. And honestly, I never got past 3 sentences. Really. Like I told you before, and you made this suggestion of getting a recorder app and just talking to it, And I've yet to do that. And I know I told you I was going to start doing that like 2 months ago, but I haven't done it yet, So I think
it'll come.
Yeah. I think it might be more interesting for me to actually tell the story to somebody and let them write it out.
Okay.
like the old fashioned way, I guess. I don't know.
Been done many times.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that's going to work for me if I do it. Like
You the new Iceberg Slim?
nah, like I said, well, like growing up where I grew up at in Newport News, it was very interesting, right? And then when I joined the military, oh man, I think I rewrote the rules on some things in life. So, but I think it'll be pretty fun to share that with everyone.
Okay. Well, maybe after I get my writing and my publishing company up and running, and
hey,
yeah, the new Iceberg Slim books will be out, man.
Did you ever read that book?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man, yeah. I read that.
That was the military right there. I read like all those Goins books.
Yeah. The only reason I read it, and like how when you meet people in the military, we literally had a guy in our battalion. He was in a different company. He was like in Charlie Company. I was in Alpha Company. And this guy was a legit pimp from Chicago. I mean, either Chicago or Detroit, one of those two areas. But he was a legit pimp from that era. And he turned his life around, gave his life to God and everything. And like I said, if you was to meet him, you would have never known it, because I never knew it until somebody else told me about it. And we were sitting out in the field exercise one day, and he was there because we was assisting with the grading on the ranges with the vehicles on firing range. And nobody was around, and I just asked him. I was like, "Hey, Sergeant, because he was we was both E6s. Yeah, we was both E6s at this time." And I was more like, "Hey, Sergeant, I heard that you was a pimp." He just kind of looked at me and put his head down and was like, "Yeah, I was." Right. And then he was like, "Don't be ashamed. You can talk to me." He said, I know who you are, and I trust you. So let's talk." And of course, he told me some of the things he did and how he applied it to life, and how some of those things he still apply to life without the deceit level, of course. And I was like, oh man, it was pretty interesting listening to that story. It's just like if you watch a movie on HBO or Showtime.
Yeah.
Whereas you had the drug dealer who fought to get out of the Jay-Z story. Let's look at it like that. Jay-Z story.
Yeah. The life.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. It was really interesting.
For those who don't know, Iceberg Slim, better known as Robert Beck, was an American pimp who later became an author, and he wrote a whole bunch of stuff. And it was kind of like a cult thing back when I was younger. And those books are still out. One of the things that really messed me up was when Black Man with a Gun book, the first one, came out. There were a lot of these African-American bookstores around. And I was really happy because I thought this is for sure going to be front row center in this African-American bookstore, because my book is about responsibility and safety. And I'm going to be helping all the people. And those bookstores kicked me out. And so they didn't want to promote anything to do with firearms. And I said, you got Iceberg Slim books in here. You got a book by a dude named Monster that is still in jail. And you got this stuff in the window. And I'm trying to save people's lives. And you chasing me out. So when the bookstores went out of business, I didn't shed no tears. I ain't bitter or anything.
I got you. Yeah, so a lot of those, I think they made a movie about Monster, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I remembered how they put him in solitary confinement because he was like so big.
Yeah.
And he still ended up figuring out a way to still lift weights. He just used what was around him, literally. And funny story, I found at that time when I first heard about him, and of course, you start doing the research on him, I found a YouTube video of this guy dancing like on Soul Train or Solid Gold or something like that back in the day.
Yeah, everybody got back in the day story. All right, man. Next up, you're going to talk about the JM Tactical holster called the Relic, and then we'll come right back with the conclusion for this week's show.
Today, we're going to discuss the JM4 Tactical Relic. One of the more important parts of concealed carry would be the holster. This would be for the safety aspect of not harming yourself and others. But more importantly, the position of the firearm is secured safely. There are many variations of holsters, but let's dive into the JM4 Tactical newest holster. If you heard me talk about the Relic before, you know this holster is something that is very beautiful to look at. Maybe that is from the two-tone makeup it displays. But when I conceal carry, it's not about fashion. The Relic is made with a polymer material called Boltron that looks like Kydex. To put it simple, Boltron can withstand more than Kydex overall. The inside of the holster is layered with Herman oak leather that is stitched into the Boltron material. For those who are more concerned about the appearance of your firearm being scratched or the abrasiveness of Kydex, then this could be your solution. This version of the JM4 Relic, which is a tuckable version, is not an appendix carry holster setup, but more suitable for the 3 o'clock position inside the waistband. Even though I prefer to carry appendix, I decided to go outside of my comfort zone and try something different. You can attempt to carry this holster in the appendix region, but you will see the holster will be moving a lot with your movement. Don't fear. You can order the JM4 Tactical Relic for appendix carry as well. Let's talk about the setup for this holster. The tuckable Relic holster is fully adjustable from the rod height to the cant you desire. The holster will come with everything you need for the final adjustments for your desired fit minus the Phillips head screwdriver. The belt loop arm has 3 holes that will adjust your rod height. If you pick the top setting, the holster will rod higher on the waistline, and if you select the lower setting, the holster will rod deeper into your pants. I decided to select the middle setting for the comfort of where it will rest and give me enough clearance to properly secure the firearm to employ. Once selected, figure out your cant, then apply the blue Loctite that comes with it to seal the deal, and you're set. Remember, if you decide to order a Relic holster at jm4tactical.com, you can get it in appendix carry, outside of the waistband, a hybrid holster, and the tuckable that we just discussed. Upon checkout, make sure you use code MW10 to let them know you heard about it from us. For those who are looking to contact me, visit blackmanwiththegun.com and under the About tab, click on my name, Michael Woodland, and shoot me an email or phone call. Please leave a voicemail or text message, and I promise I will get back to you.
MarylandShallIssue.org. It's an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the preservation and advancement of gun owners' rights in Maryland. It seeks to educate the community about the right of self-protection, the safe handling of firearms, and the responsibility that goes with carrying a firearm in public. MarylandShallIssue.org. This is the group, your group, the grassroots group in the state of Maryland. Join us, no matter where you are. MarylandShallIssue.org. All right, and we're back. And I got a bug in my studio. Where'd this thing come from?
Man, you want to get some of that good. He's like, make me famous.
Man, as we head out for this week, any words of wisdom?
Only thing I can honestly say is if you go to the range, be safe, use ear protection, use eye protection, but stay fast on the trigger. But, you know, if anything else, if you just want to listen to the podcast, make sure you go download the Black Man with the Gun app.
Yeah, that thing's available everywhere. It's for Android and for iOS. So it doesn't matter which series of phones that you have. And it's real easy to use. This is your friend and your brothers, Michael and Ken Blanchard. And thank you for being a part of the show.
Until next time, keep shooting, keep practicing, and have fun.
Just in case nobody has told you this today, we love you. And it's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until next week, shalom, baby. let's see. Make sure did I cover everything? I talked about last week I had a question about the firearms instructors. Yeah, if you're looking for some info on how to make a little bit more money, be more professional, I'm putting together a special PDF for you guys. Stuff I've learned, and if you're interested in getting that, hit me back at blackmanwithagun.com. Let's see, what else do I got here? Don't forget, we got our sponsor of ammo.com, USCCA, Crossbreed Holsters, and for those who live in and around Maryland, there's Maryland Shall Issue. Don't forget to support those brothers and sisters there. And I got a book coming out called Love Never Dies. It's a part of the Solomon Love series. It's a new thing I got going on. And let me play that real quick.
These are the tales of Solomon Love, who, while escaping American slavery, became bound to the world of the supernatural. Now a reclusive blues musician, he is haunted by his past, hunted for his curse, and fighting for survival in the present. This is book 1.
Yeah, I just found a dude at my job that just bought the first book, and he did a voiceover for me, and I love this thing. It's nice to have a community of people just like you that are into fiction and supporting stuff that's not necessarily guns. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to my site, kenblanchard.com. Remember, that's Ken with 2 N's. And don't forget, I'm more than just guns. If there's something spiritual or personal that you want to talk to me about, you can find me at speaklifechurch.net. That's speaklifechurch.net. We got a podcast and everything. Love you.